Hi everyone, Lisa here from Dog Days Training for Life and Hip Hop, and welcome to our Monday Night Live. Tonight's topic is on what to do when your dog reacts. Now, I presume because you are listening in, you do have a reactive dog and you're looking for some tips on what to do. So let's just get started right away into this topic. Make sure I can get here we go, my screen working. So I promise you, if you've come in to get some fast tips so you can learn what to do to be able to handle a situation when your dog reacts, whether it's to another dog, to a person, whatever the case may be, that is exactly what we're going to cover tonight. But before we get into that, there are a few things that I want to mention that I think are really important for us to understand so that we can be clear on what it is you should be focusing on and what you should not be focusing on. So first of all, we can't think about fixing anything in the moment. When we are in the heat of the moment and your dog is reacting to something in the environment around them, that's not the time that we're going to try to explain what we would rather have them do or try to have them change their behavior. You really can't teach them at that point. Just you're probably feeling quite worked up and emotional and upset. It's not the best time to try to teach them because you may be in an energy or a state of mind that doesn't allow you to do that very well. It's the same for your dog on the receiving end. They're not going to be in a state of mind that's really the right time for them to be learning anything. So we want to make sure in the heat of the moment that we are not correcting the dog. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details about why we don't do that because I've covered that quite a bit in another live or two and in some other YouTube videos. So if you're interested in learning more about the whys of what we're doing and how we help our dogs in the long run with reactivity, you can check one of those out. But for the purposes of this video, we are going to just cover more about what you want to be doing or needing to be doing in your focus during a reactive moment. So we definitely don't want to be correcting the dog because that's not going to do you any good. From a point of view of physically what you should be doing, a lot of times if our dog is out in front of us at the end of the line trying to pull us over, or they're lunging or bouncing around a little bit, I know a lot of times people will try to walk up to them because they want to try and calm them down or interact or do something with them. And in general, what normally happens if we walk up to them, then the dogs will just take up that slack and get that much closer to the trigger, which is not what we want to be having happen. So we don't want to correct the dog and we don't want to walk up to them. Oops, here we go. So first things first, you need to stay calm. Now, I know that can be very difficult in the heat of the moment, but when you understand what to do, that you are clear on what the process will look like and what you need to do to get out of there smoothly and with the least amount of stress as possible. As you learn what those steps are and they become more automatic for you, then it will be a lot easier for you to be able to remain calm. And it's so important we do this, not just for your sake and for your sense of well-being, but because, as I put up in almost every reactive chat that I have, you have to remember that your dog is not giving you a rough time. They are having a rough time. So it's so important for us to try and stay calm and be supportive so that we can be helping our dog get through this the best that we can, rather than making it even harder for them. Now, if you've come to any of my classes, you will have heard me talking about this again and again. This is one of the most important things to think about when you have a reactive dog. And this also applies when you're working through an actual program to help build their confidence and change the way that they're responding to the triggers. In the moment, if something goes sideways, and your dog does react, the first thing you want to think about is creating distance. Distance is your best friend. Distance will lower the intensity of the trigger, and it will make your dog feel safer. So they're having the reaction to try and create distance to make that thing that's bothering them go away. So you can create that sensation of comfort and safety by moving away from the trigger. And if your dog recognizes that you are consistently doing that, that you have a plan and that space is being created, that really does a lot for their comfort level. It's one of the best things you can do to support them. And in the moment, it's going to make things easier for you when your dog is reacting. So a few things specifically that you can do that will make it easier for you to focus on something, let go of the reactivity, and just get down to business to get your dog comfortable and getting away, creating that distance. One of the most valuable things you can do is have a few leash skills that you can use in this specific situation. I've talked about these a few times too. My absolute favorite and my go-to is the emergency U-turn. So this one is fantastic because as you're approaching the trigger, you basically pull a 180 and go the opposite way. Now, like any skill that you want to use in a challenging moment, you have to practice this ahead of time. You're not going to work on this or train your dog how to do it in the heat of the moment of a reaction. This is something that you want to start practicing at home and then moving to the outdoors to practice, and then practicing around various distractions. And then eventually, when you need to use it, you and your dog will both be so good at it, will become so naturally and come so automatically to you that it'll be something that you can just do without having to think about it. Your dog starts to react, and right away you immediately and proficiently do the emergency U-turn, create distance, problem solved. So this is, if you have nothing else in your skill set, in your toolkit, this is one of the most powerful skills that you and your dog can possess if they're reactive and you need something to rely on when they do react. So emergency U-turn. I just realized, my auto spell check just corrected that for me. Thank you, auto spell check. Okay, my other behavior that I will recommend in certain situations, this one may be enough. The U-turn is the most effective method because it creates the most immediate and direct creation of distance. So that would always be my go-to. But, maybe in certain environments or at some point in your dog's training, this may be enough, that you may actually be able to add a little bit of distance in a less extreme way and almost look like you are just passing by the trigger. The trick is to start early and to create enough distance so you've really got a big curve in that go wide into the outside. With practice, and as your dog gains confidence, that curve can become smaller and smaller till eventually you can just create a little bubble and pass on by. So it's something that you can use as you move forward in your training. Again, for the most part, in the very beginning, if you have a dog that's just starting in the training program, or maybe it's you haven't even started training, then the emergency U-turn is my skill of choice. And then the final leash skill that I like to have in my toolkit is the let's go. It's, again, another one that I would practice. Just like any other training skill that I'm teaching my dog, I'm not going to do it in the heat of the moment. We're going to practice and get really good at it so I can be relaxed and somewhat upbeat in the moment to help keep the energy positive. This one is particularly good if you can't just do a U-turn and go in the opposite direction. There might be something in the environment that's preventing you from doing that. So the let's go is just to encourage your dog to come away with you, and you can basically go kind of any way that you want, wherever your escape route will allow you. Now, another thing that you can do, aside from leash skills, something I found that's very effective with some dogs, if you have adequate distance, is to just do a treat dump where you have something, ideally tasty, so it will catch your dog's attention and they'll be interested in it. If the food isn't tempting enough, or you're too close to the trigger, your dog's appetite will be diminished and this won't work. But if the circumstances are right, this is a great tool to use. And you just basically dump treats down onto the ground past your dog's nose and let them go for a search. And what will happen is that will distract them so that the trigger can go on its way. Your dog will be head down, which is a relaxation posture. They'll be busy doing something else, so there's no staring going on, which might make the situation more intense. So it's a really good distraction technique that will work, again, if the circumstances are right for a lot of dogs. Not for every dog, but for a lot of dogs. The other thing that you can use is a target hand to guide your dog away. Of course, they already have to be taught this skill. If they aren't great at targeting, then you're not going to be able to use this in a moment like a full-blown reaction. They're going to be too over threshold to perform the behavior. But in certain circumstances, again, a target hand is a nice way just to get you past, because they can focus on your hand and use that as a visual signal to guide them. It's like an emotional anchor that they can just focus on your hand and not have to worry about looking at the trigger. You could also use a food lure for doing this as well, especially in a 911 situation where you know that the target hand just isn't going to be enough to get their attention. So those give you a few skills then. 3 leash skills that I really like: the treat dump, and then either a targeting hand or a luring hand. And all of those will help you guide your dog away from the trigger, or provide more distance so that they feel safe and can relax. So add distance. That's your first choice. You always want to make room. We're not going to be dilly-dallying, trying to figure out what's going on. I almost always will add distance. And if I've started with a working program and something, so what I mean by that is we are now at a stage where we can be starting to make choices about, is this a situation where the trigger can be used for a training purpose, where I can start building confidence or building skill? In that case, I would make specific choices about what we're going to be doing. If you're ever in doubt, you're like, oh, I don't know, is this the right setup? Is the trigger at the right distance? Is the trigger too intense? Is this the right moment or day to be trying this? If you ever start to go into that, I don't know, do your emergency U-turn or one of the other skills or techniques that I just talked about, and get your dog out of there. And even if you do create distance right away, and maybe you didn't need to do that, it's never going to slow anything down. It's not going to impede your training or your progress. In that moment, if you add distance and you realize your dog's actually quite relaxed and you're feeling okay, then you could switch over to training mode. So you're not going to be preventing your dog from making progress by doing this. Having them feel safe right away and get them out of that reactive mode is always a good choice. Okay, so there you go. There's your tools that you can use in the moment. What's next? So you've got your distance. Either the trigger's disappeared, you've moved on. What do you do then, because you probably still are a little bit way away from home. It's not like you can just be absolutely done with the walk. So once the reactive moment is over, what should you think about doing next? So my first um, piece of advice is always, well, just think about a moment. If you're safe, you've got your distance, you don't have to worry about the trigger approaching again, everything's okay for the time being, then you just need to assess and decide, are you okay? Is your dog okay? Are you a little bit shaken up, but otherwise all right? Are you really shaken up? Depending on how traumatizing you or your dog feel, traumatized, sorry, you can make a decision about what to do next in that walk. So specifics aside, what you want to be trying to accomplish for sure after a reactive moment, as long as you feel safe now, your next item is to try and provide something fun to do for your dog. We basically are trying to help our dogs move on emotionally, so that when all is said and done, at the end of that walk, the last memories that your dog has is of something fun. So if you feel well enough, or you're feeling that your dog is okay to still stay on a walk, then you can do something fun outside in the outdoor area where you are, or maybe you can move on to another area where you feel a little bit safer. If you're one or both of you are really shaken up, then the best thing to do is just go home. Again, we want to try and have you feeling comfortable. If you're really, really shaken up and you can't kind of get rid of that sensation, if even watching your dog potentially doing their favorite thing isn't going to help you relax, then there's not a lot of benefit in you staying out in the environment, because your dog's going to be feeling that vibe. So decide whether you feel okay to stay out or you think it's appropriate for your dog, and if not, go home. But either way, you want to be providing something fun for your dog, out or at home. And so the whole point of this is that we want to end that walk on a good note. So your dog, their, again, last experience isn't that traumatizing event. That's not what's going to be lingering in their head, and they'll be thinking about moving forward. So it can potentially be building up. Instead, we want to just move on and give them something really great to do, so that anchors in their head. Now, for the next couple of days, you have to remember that your dog may be out of sorts. You may not notice it on the surface. It may not be completely obvious to you, but the fact of the matter is that there's something going on with them and their hormones, and we need to factor that into what we're doing with them. So what happens in that moment is their adrenaline and cortisol becomes elevated. And although adrenaline can return to normal in a fairly short period of time, the cortisol remains elevated, and it can stay elevated for like 2 whole days. So there's a few things that we want to keep in mind over that period, because what can happen is things that wouldn't typically bother our dog might become a problem for them now, because they're a little bit on edge, even if it's just under the surface. And again, it's not immediately apparent. So there's a few things keep in mind. Again, try and do fun, upbeat things. I'll talk a little bit more about some other activities that you can do to help. But we want to be mindful about not reintroducing that anxiety again. We want to help them lower that cortisol level and get back to a healthy level. So one thing, it's probably not a good idea to go that exact spot where that event happened. Although we do want to help them learn that that was just a bit of a fluke, a one-off, that they don't have to have a superstitious fear of it. In the first couple of days when their cortisol is still elevated, you don't need to do it at that point. It would be better to focus on doing things in other environments that don't have that emotional kind of baggage attached. And then the other thing would to be try to avoid adrenalizing activities for the next couple of days. It is true that providing some exercise and tiring the dog out physically will to some degree relax them, but because we already just had a big spike in our adrenaline and the cortisol still elevated, it's better to try and get some other things going on to counteract those stress related hormones. So doing other activities instead of adrenalizing ones for a couple of days after a reactive incident, that's a better choice. So we can think about, all right, by that, what do you mean? Picking things that your dog loves to do. And again, whether this is immediately after the reactive event, when you just want to end that particular outing on a good note, whether you're doing it outside or you've come home to do it, doing things that your dog loves to do, or it can be the things that you're doing over the next couple of days to help them become more relaxed and get their hormones in balance. So you can do snifaris, treasure hunts, adventure walks. Those are all things that don't make dogs feel really great. Sniffing is a relaxing activity, and because of the body posture with the head lowering, the hormones that are released are really good for counteracting the cortisol. Now, if you have decided that for the next couple of days or that day after the hour or two after that event, that you just want to lay low and stay at home because your dog and you will feel better being in that safe environment, you can still do snifaris in the yard, or you can let your dog just lounge around in the yard. You can play games at home that will sort of encourage their sense of adventure and exploration and curiosity. Another thing, licking and chewing. In addition to sniffing, licking and chewing are absolutely amazing for releasing relaxation hormones. So we want to be doing everything we can to try and boost that oxytocin and get that cortisol out of their system. So those are all wonderful things. And depending on your dog's specific tastes, you may focus on just one of those or a couple of those, or you might want to give them a little bit of variety. Again, the point is on relaxation and just being, calmer and a little bit slower, just to help them release that stress. Now, there are some other things that you can do in addition to activities to help your dog get rid of the cortisol and release relaxation hormones. So one of them is actually music. Just like music can get us fired up and supercharged, or it can help relax us, it has the same effect on our dogs too. And there actually has been some research done to find out what specific music has an effect on the most number of dogs. And they've actually found out that Chopin has, for some dogs, a pretty profound effect on helping them relax. So there's this really cool company that has created a CD. Of course, you can just make your own too, but they've actually tested the specific etudes or I can't remember exactly which pieces they have on the CD, but they've expanded their line. So they've got things for very specific situations, like while your dog is traveling, if they're a nervous traveler. So you can kind of check them out and see which one specifically would suit you, but it's a really good product. Another thing that you can do is massage or T-touch. I'm not sure if you've heard of T-touch before, but it's really an amazing supportive modality to help our dogs for all kinds of different things. But when they've gone in shock or they're stressed out, things like mouth work, head work, and ear work, specifically ear slides, are absolutely amazing. Like, we've seen lots of animals that are in shock that can be brought out of shock just by doing ear slides. So it's definitely something to look into. And simple things like ear slides, you don't have to take a lot of training to be able to do them effectively. So it's something that any parent could offer their dog. Another option is DAP. It's an appeasing pheromone that mimics what the mom is releasing when the puppies are nursing. So it's something that they're familiar with that creates a sensation of well-being and calm and safety. For some dogs, it's not effective, but there are, I, I believe, forgive me, I can't remember now if it's 30% of the dogs it doesn't work on, but the other percent it's really effective, or if it's the other way around. But I have personally seen the effect that it does have on some of the dogs whose parents have used it, and it's really amazing. You can just put it on the bedding or on a collar, so it's pretty easy to use. It's a little bit expensive, but you don't have to use a lot of it, so it will last. And then the last thing that you can do is just some natural strategies using aromatherapy. Lavender is great for calming. So this is something that you could, again, use as an aromatherapy. When used appropriately, it's a safe choice that you can put in the environment, and it has a really good calming effect. Okay, so I've talked about what to do in the moment. And of course, that's why you're here. And it's important to be able to do that, because although we want to try and avoid those situations, reality is they are going to happen. So being able to work with them, work through them with as much grace and not getting too stressed out is really valuable. But I just do have to mention that we don't want to just be relying on that. Obviously, in the long run, we do want to have a plan to help our dogs gain more confidence and be able to cope with triggers in a way that isn't so stressful for them. So depending on your dog's situation, how intense the reaction to the trigger is, how long the behavior has been going on. You know, your training plan to help them may only take a matter of weeks, or it may take months. So it's not something that can always just be done on your own. A lot of times we need to help build up a proper plan, know what the management that's required, what that looks like, what the process is of the things that you need to be doing, and figuring out the distances and understanding whether the dog's over threshold or not. Usually I advise for most situations that people get help from an experienced, should be certified, knowledgeable, and positive reinforcement trainer. So if you are going through this situation and you haven't taken those first steps to start helping your dog with a long-term plan to make things better, then I do have, of course, full programs to help with that. But one thing that I am offering now, if you go to my website, hiphup.ca, you can go to the homepage, and at the very top of the page, there's a Get Started button. And if you click that, that'll take you to my checkup page. This is a special page that I invite people to take advantage of if they haven't trained with me before, or they have something that's just come up and they're not quite sure what the next step is. This is a really great thing to take advantage of, because you can have an hour of my time to ask questions. We can talk about what your next steps would be, what your different options are. And this particular service is substantially less than a regular hour-long consultation will be. And because you've listened in to the live, I have a special additional discount available. So if you go to that, if you click on the Get Now button for the Hip Up Checkup, there's an option there for you to get a coupon. And if you type in live chat, all caps, you'll actually end up getting that hour of dedicated time from me for half the regular price that I would charge for an hour of consultation online. not in person. So it's a really great option if you're not quite sure what you want to do. And rather than just sort of chatting for 20 minutes about options, getting some actual usable information so you feel like you're taking a step forward, that's a super option for you. So if you're interested, check it out. I would love to help. Alrighty, so that is it. If you have any questions that you would like to ask, you know you're always welcome to do so in the comments in this group. I love to have some feedback. That's great, but I am here to help you. So if you have any specific questions that you've tried this and you don't feel it worked quite right, or you want to talk a little bit about what you are using and what I think about that and how I can help you, you're more than welcome to bring that up in the group, and I will come in and provide an answer for you. All right, everybody, thanks so much for listening in, and you have a wonderful day. Take care.